Welcome back to day 7 of this 14-day series aimed to help you replicate real San Francisco sourdough bread while staying safely isolated in your own home. The first week of this series has been all about getting your new starter ready to bake with, and here we are at the end of it. Yep, it's day 7, and we've now hit the halfway mark for the series. So you may not have made it to this video in exactly 7 days, and that's just fine. Every starter is different, so you should follow the steps in the previous videos at your own pace until you're ready to move to this, the final step in building your new starter. So at this point, you should have a starter that's just about ready to bake with. But a reminder that for this series, we're also going to be converting it to a white flour only starter. And that's the simple step for today. You should now be able to recognize when your starter is peaked and needs to be fed. And you can probably even predict when that's going to happen for your specific starter and the specific temperature you keep it at. And that's a great thing. By knowing that, you can start to plan your starter builds to match up with your baking schedule this coming week. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, because there's still one step to go. Yesterday we did the transition step, where we increased the ratio of white to wholemeal flour. Today, in the final step, we're simply going all in with the white flour and feeding it with 100 grams of white flour and 100 grams of filtered water. And just like before, we're first discarding most of our starter and only carrying over 30 grams. And that's all there is to it. You should continue with this step for the next week as your starter continues to strengthen. During this week though, you might want to try a few different temperatures and record how long it takes to peak at each of them. Maybe the oven with just the light on will peak in 5 hours, while the countertop could take 8 hours. And somewhere cooler, like a basement, might take 14. Once you have this information, you can really use it to make your starter work around your schedule instead of the other way around. And since this is the last video in the series dedicated to your starter, it's worth mentioning that you don't have to waste 100 grams of flour on it each feeding after next week. That's really just to make sure you're strengthening it as much as possible in these early days. So after one more week of these final step feedings, you can switch to mini feeds, where you'll just half the amounts of flour and water, but keep the carryover starter at the same 30 grams. The only extra note here is that after your starter has been going strong for at least 2 weeks, and assuming you don't want to bake with it for the upcoming week, you can simply give it a good feed using the larger final step recipe and then pop it in your fridge. It should last in there happily for at least a week. If you do notice a bit of hooch forming as you check in on it, just bring it out, stir it up, and feed it for the first time with the flour and water amounts of the final step, but only discard half of the now sleepy starter before you do. After that, you can either put it back in the fridge after an hour rest on the counter, or you can proceed to a levain build stage after your starter peaks for the first time. And this levain stage is what we'll be discussing in tomorrow's video. So until then, I wish you the best of luck on this exciting last step of your sourdough starter journey, and if you've come up with a fun name for your starter, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. That's class dismissed for another day, and I'll hopefully see you back here tomorrow for the next step. Bye for now.